What's going on, guys? This is the Snodgrass podcast. Thank you guys for joining me today. I have a gentleman named Mike Sipple Jr. on the show with me. Before I talk about Mike, I want you guys to go over to the Iron Deep YouTube channel and please subscribe. Leave a comment in the comment section. We got all the podcasts going video on YouTube channel, and we got extra videos coming out each and every month. Currently, we're going to have more in the future. Also, go over to irondeep.com if you're interested in our men's community at Iron Deep. Make sure you guys sign up for our email newsletter, and if you're really interested, sign up for our Men's Awakening Retreat. It's in the Rocky Mountains, September the 25th to 28th of this year. We got 4 spots left, so check that out. Mike Sipple Jr. is the co-founder and CEO of Talent Magnet Institute. He also hosts a Talent Magnet Institute podcast. He has written a book called Leadership Fusion: Best Practices to Lead and Influence. And Mike looks for unlocking human potential. He has courses on his website that really helps leaders care about their employees, pour into their employees more, get more production, but really just care about them as human beings and wanting them to succeed not only professionally but also personally. This is a heartfelt podcast, and I can't wait to introduce you now to Mike Sipple Jr.
Hello, Brett. It's great to be with you and your audience, and look forward to meeting some new friends along this journey with you, man.
Yeah, man. I'm really excited about this interview. I've been studying you. You're kind of a big deal in the Midwest. So I always like to say that, but you are the co-founder of Talent Magnet Institute. You run your own podcast, Talent Magnet Institute Podcast. You have best-selling authorship with Leadership Fusion: Best Practice to Lead and Influence. And so you've been in this space a long time, and this is a space I am really digging right now because I'm stepping into how do you pour into other leaders? How do you make them better leaders, better men and women? And you've been in this space a long time, so I think you can bring so much value to our audience. But just give us a little taste of who is Mike Sipple Jr.
Oh, well, and thank you for all those kind words. I always like to say, I'm here because of the phrase "but God." So, so I'm born and raised as a part of entrepreneurs. My parents are both entrepreneurs, and grew up. I'm the youngest of 3. I have a sister that's 6 years older than me and one that's 9 years older than me. I like to say my parents learned a lot and then got to parent again. So, but I married my high school sweetheart. We met in marching band. And she was my first chair trumpet. Her and I did play some James Bond themed solos in front of crowds at football games in high school.
Nice.
And we've got a just entering 9th grader, a 7th grader, and a 5th grader. 3 amazing children, very active. And I've learned a lot through this journey. I now own and run our family business that's almost a half century old. Centennial, which is a global executive search firm specializing mostly in succession and next level leadership teams. That's our real niche. And then we launched an organization called the Talent Magnet Institute about 4 years ago now. My father and I did, after many years of really not responding to something we had as a calling, and our board called us out on it and said, you guys, now is the time, right? We need leaders who are more compassionate, more caring, more loving for their people now more than ever. And your organization knows how to come in, understand, and help transform the way people lead themselves and their teams. So we launched that about 4 years ago. Between the 2 organizations, we've got, between employees and contractors, about 50 people interacting between both brands. So,
Wow.
So that's what we do. And we hail from Greater Cincinnati, Ohio. Our office is based in Newport, Kentucky. We have served and worked with companies in over 18 countries.
Wow.
And again, mostly in the family and private business space. That's where we thrive. That's who we love to serve. And which includes a whole lot of entrepreneurs trying to live out their dreams, and sometimes doing it well and sometimes not. So
Yeah. Well, it's great because most of our listeners are business owners and entrepreneurs. A lot of them in the real estate space because that's the space I'm in. That's who I know. And
Mhm.
so let's talk about this. When you talk about your company, mostly deals with succession and next level leadership. So, like, what does that mean? Because typically you just
Yeah.
say, "Oh, we work on leadership. We make leaders." But what does that mean? Succession
Yeah.
and
So succession is really looking at the future state, right? So that future state might mean that I'm going to retire in 2 years and I need to think about the next generation. It could mean that over the next 10 years, we're going to go through some type of transformation. And we may need, in our case, we are a family business, we've lived it. We might need to add professional leadership team members to our team. We might have a family member that's been in one role for 4 decades and it's time to make a transition. It also might mean that we don't have a pipeline. And, we always say like hiring a leader doesn't solve your talent and leadership gaps. In fact, it highlights that you aren't doing enough to develop the next generation. You aren't doing enough to invest in the people that have said yes to work in your environment and that you have the privilege to employ and lead. So we really try to help with that topic, right? Sometimes we lead searches for an executive that's determined by the end of the engagement that we have the right person inside. And
mm,
that's really our role and responsibility, is to help you find the right person and walking companies through what that process looks like.
I love that.
And then
So,
we and then we have this whole leadership development organization that then comes in and points when spotlight is identified on leadership and talent development gaps. We help people get in it into an economical way to start investing in their people. So
no, I love that. I mean, I was looking at your guys' website, and again, yeah, so many different resources on how to be a better leader. I think you had a free course on there. I was like, man, I want to take this free course. I think we all want
yeah,
to be better leaders, especially driven business owners. And so you talk about like this succession. So a lot of yours is maybe just this transition, this new seasons of life, someone maybe stepping into. I know I ran a real estate business for 13 plus years, and then I actually had a succession about 2 years ago and brought a guy in as a CEO. So that's kind of what you're talking about.
yeah.
And so I was reading again. Your organization, one of your missions is to unlock human potential.
Mhm.
Um, so can you kind of just explain like behind that? So how
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
what does that mean? Unlocking human potential. How do you guys do that?
yeah. So we help facilitate it, right? And part of the way that we do this really is mindset and heart change. So even what you referenced on succession just isn't replacing someone, it's building a talent pipeline that allows you to be prepared for change. Similarly, with unlocking human potential, everyone has potential. All of
Yeah.
us listening. And fortunately, someone saw it in us at some point and help nurture that and help coach it, help provided feedback. In some cases, pointed it out even when we, those listening, those with us today, didn't see it, right?
Mhm.
Didn't know it, didn't, someone else had to help us identify it. So essentially, we help organizations adjust their mindsets of the responsibilities and joy that it is to lead others.
Mm.
And unlocking human potential doesn't just mean investing in people purely to maximize what I get out of them relating to the job that I've hired them in, because we're talking about unlocking human potential. So there's something somewhere, somehow, an opportunity that you have with every single human that's around you to see something in them that they may not see in themselves, to give them a opportunity to share what their hopes and dreams and goals are that may not have anything to do with succeeding in this sales role or being the best, controller or financial leader or IT person or marketing executive. They may have things outside of work. They may want to compete in, you know,
The
cross
Spartan race.
country. They may want to, mountain bike. They may want to, whom, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Um, we have the opportunity to help them get there, to help them see their potential, to encourage them, to provide real feedback, even when it hurts, because it's what helps us all advance, right? So it's shifting our mindset from trying to develop people to be the best employee they can be for my company, to
For the
how do I actually help this human thrive?
mm.
And
Ye-
so there's some mindset shift that takes place there. I believe, because I've lived it, I've seen it, I've experienced it firsthand, and I've watched it in others. All it takes is the right person to encourage someone at the right time, that then begins some type of lift, right?
yeah.
And helps them get through whatever's keeping them from achieving that potential. We have the opportunity to be the key that helps unlock it,
Mm.
and recognizing that we're only one person in the journey. So in order to do our mission, we have to educate and inspire millions of people for a cascading effect,
Mm.
because you may only be with me on this one particular journey. Our hope is to create a world where people are thriving, to help others unlock human potential.
Mm. Man, I love this. And yeah, you talk about this untapped potential. Every human has potential. And I got a quick story. It's just, it takes sometimes these small little encouraging things. I got an email last week on a guy I hadn't talked to for about a year, but he said he's watching some of my podcasts and just wanted to encourage me. He's like, you do a really great job interviewing your guests. And just that one thing really excited me just to keep going, just to do more podcasts. I was like, wow. I was like, I'm glad someone noticed that.
Yeah, Brett.
Um,
Just yesterday, I was in a conversation with a organization that asked me to speak, and I was sharing with them that, think right now. So they asked me a very similar question, like, what does that entail, and what does that feel like and look like? And I said, there is something that someone in your life, work, personal, has done over the last 3 to 4 days that made you feel good,
mm.
or that you saw something that you're like, wow, that was really, really fantastic. But I bet you didn't say anything,
Yeah.
right? So to our audience that have joined us, like, think of that person right now.
Mm.
Who did something, shared something, led in a certain way, asked the question that you were like, wow, that was what we needed to hear. And write that name down right now, and do something over the next 3 to 4 days to thank them. It can take 30 seconds. It could take 30 minutes. You could go invite them to lunch,
Mm.
but you don't have to spend any money or time to say thank you. And that one thank you for what you did, for how you showed up, for what you asked, could be the thing, Brett, that you just alluded to, that helps that person go on, that helps that person feel like, you know what? I was questioning myself, because humans, we question ourselves and go, wow, that's exactly the encouragement. I was afraid everybody was upset that I asked the question because nobody said anything. We're
Right.
all so in tune of not taking that extra step.
Mm.
And that extra step can be exactly what leads someone to realize their fullest potential.
Yeah. I love that. You also say in your book, so again, leadership fusion, best practice to lead and influence. You said in your book that, and you even said on this podcast that, especially as a leader, let's say we have an employee that can't comes in, and to view them as a human, not just for the benefit of us, not just for the benefit of our organization. I actually had this happen last December. Had an employee worked with us for about a year, and he had these big dreams to do his own real estate and things like that, and some of his big goals. And I said, why are you kind of working with us? Like, you have these dreams. And he ended up leaving, but he still brings back business, things like that. But it was just an affirmation for me, like, again, when employee, to view them as a human, not just as your ROI. Can you just dig into that a little bit more? Because sometimes we are constantly just
Yeah.
talking about how can they benefit our organization? How can we train them to benefit our organization to
Yeah.
make us more revenue? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And I'll also share why it benefits you to lead this way, why it benefits your brand and your company to lead this way. So, one, we all, we should all want to be the positive story in other people's lives, right? We don't know how, planting seeds and doing great things for people and helping people see their greatest potential and encouraging them and helping provide an environment where they can thrive holistically. So think about it. None of us live to work, we work to live. So the ability for me to understand, you don't have to tell me all of your personal goals and aspirations, but I can ask and I can say, you don't have to tell me, but the more I know about you, the more I can help you, the more I can draw connection, the more I can provide what you need to thrive while you're helping us do what we do best. So by doing this and unlocking that potential, they're going to help an organization, because this may be the first organization that cared about them. So now I'm showing up every day at 110%, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the benefit of what you just referenced of that gentleman who was with you, he was with you for a reason. There was something he knew or was told or learned that he thought he knew he didn't have the skill or the experience yet. And I want to go work for an organization that can equip me to do what my long-term goal is, right? So there was something there. Even if they move on, it's okay that we help grow and develop and nurture and encourage them, because what you just also said was, and now he refers things to us, right? We get leads, he's a positive amplification for you and your organization. So when you do this, when you lead this way, even if they leave, they will look back and say, man, they'll tell all of their friends the
Mm-hmm.
positive stuff. Not that you didn't encourage him, that you didn't invest in him, that you didn't care about him as a human, quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if you have goals and aspirations one day to lead your company, here's a great company to go learn from, because they're going to teach you all the things and you're going to be able to bring all your skills. And, that's okay. It's okay being a stepping stone if you're leaving a legacy, because these people are leaving going, wow, this is the best environment and the best leadership team that I've ever worked for.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And all it takes, I tell an audience, and it's pretty much, there's components of this that are completely free. Just sitting down and having a conversation is free. Just caring about people and getting to know people in a way that they're like, man, my last team never spent time doing this. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we do, because we know the more you're engaged and we show you that we care, the more that engagement shows up for our customers, the more impact we can have, the faster we can get to our mission and goals. And it is a mindset shift, that this is not the way, unfortunately, that HR has told businesses to run, that I do constantly verify, hey, this getting to know people is completely legal, right? And it is, as long as it's appropriate and they know they don't have to share everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm allowed to let them know that I care, that I love them, that I want to help see them and their families thrive. And meanwhile, here are our goals and here's our mission. And I need you to help us achieve this too, and ensure those things are in alignment.
Yeah. So I love that. You talk about that in your book, just having this real conversation, impactful conversations. You talk about, instead of being maybe a manager or a boss, that you're more of a mentor to these employees, to your team. And he told a story, and I always think about this of your own life. And he told a story about, there was a teacher, Miss Gregory, history teacher in your own life. And I think if you're listening in, start to think about, who was that mentor in your life? Was it a coach? Was it a teacher? Was it someone just had, for me, like when I was in college, had a guy reach out, had coffee with me every other week, just having conversations with me, just pouring. But I remember it because he just cared, right?
Yeah.
So talk about your story a little bit, how that impacted you, and then in transition, you are trying to be that, obviously, for
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple, just if you don't mind, I'm going to unpack the first
Yeah.
statement around boss manager to coach and mentor. I do think, unfortunately, the word boss has been villainized, which I think is
Yeah.
inappropriate, right? I think it's okay. People aspire to be the boss and manager. Like, that's okay. And it's not a bad word. And we can be a great boss and an encouraging and loving and caring boss and a great manager. People want to be, we need to spend more time equipping people how to be a great manager and a great boss versus you just become one. right? But I do want to click on that because in that, we're trying to teach this mindset of being a coach and a mentor as you're a boss and a manager so that you raise people up. And your organization may look around and go, wow, all of the great talents coming out of this classroom, right? Coming out of this workspace. And that was similar with Miss Gregory. That was a history teacher. History wasn't necessarily my favorite topic. But at least I also thought, I was in a program called the International Baccalaureate Program, and we had to write content. We had to write essays and do research papers and all of these things that I look back now, 21, 22 years later, and go, wow, my love for writing and content creation and podcasting and standing in front of an audience, talking, was really amplified by Miss Gregory because she saw something different. So, and I'll even admit there were times Miss Gregory's class that I slept. I feel like she let me sleep and now I look back and go, you know what? I think she did let me sleep because she looked around and said, well, these kids need some sleep. They had a long night.
Right.
She was so gosh darn caring. Like she loved. Yeah. And she encouraged, and she was also hard on you. Like she was an aggressive, like a teacher that was fairly aggressive with the workload, with the expectations. But why? Because she saw the potential in the students she had. And she knew if you're in this program, I have the ability to push you. She got to know her students. She would ask people to do volunteer things. She would ask people to show up and help her with things. And I look back and I go, it wasn't because she couldn't do it herself. It's because she was building responsibility. She was showing people that we can go further than just the workload we thought we were responsible for by showing up at her classroom after school to help with other things. And then she really tried to find what are you interested in and how can I light a fire, right? How can I put a spotlight on the things that you may not even know that I see you light up about? So she saw the things that we lit up about. She saw the things that got us passionate, and she almost like pushed, I'm going to drive a conversation here to figure out why do you light up so much about this? And then I'm going to say, you know what? If you believe that, you should write a paper about it. You should research it. You should argue your statement. You should, step into nobody else sees it the way you're seeing it and fight for it, right? Those are the types of things she did. And looking back, I'm not the only one that says, oh my gosh, Miss Gregory made a profound impact on me.
Wow.
I think, from our podcast, Brett, we've interviewed, hundreds of leaders from throughout the world. And so many of the conversations, it's about a teacher at some point who asked the question, who challenged a student, who helped them point them in a direction of this is an area I think you should really look into, right? I would say it's probably part of the teacher's responsibility. It's why they're in the role they're in. They want to help the children that sit in their classroom maximize their potential. They want that kid to have the same opportunities that the last class had. And I use this example of, and we should too. Why don't more people treat their team members, the people they have the privilege to employ, the way a teacher approaches their students? A good teacher who cares, who wants to create legacy and wants to inspire people, where you hear 20 years later, I can't wait to go see it, check in on my teacher and see how he or she's doing. And I picked that story. I've fortunately, I've had several teachers who were in that kind of mindset, and kudos to the principal that built this team that did that. And the principal that built that team, I still know to this day. And he is an amazing human being, Mr. Grind, who helped build the team to put this team together. It's all intentional leadership. It's all an example of intentional leadership. So who is that teacher in your life? What did they do? And it may be something that made you feel very uncomfortable, that you were like, I don't want to do a research paper on this. I don't want to, you expected how much work from me?
Hmm.
It may be someone that said, you know what, maybe you're not right for this class. Let's move you to another class.
Hmm.
All of this directly relates to the workplace. But I have found if you dig into individual stories, so often there's a teacher that stands the test of time in their memory bank of the people that stand out in their lives.
Mm.
And we've all met those teachers. We may even be friends with teachers who just have a calling to teach and equip the next generation. And I think that's a beautiful example of what a true leader, coach, and mentor looks like.
Mm. I love that. You talk about in your book, and even with Miss Gregory, you said that she asked really good questions. Number one, she cared about you, and it's not like, 'cause sometimes you think of a mentor or coach as someone giving feedback, giving advice, but you really talk about active listening. Like, I always use, we have two ears and one mouth. We should listen twice as much as we speak. And you talk about this active listening, and I've been really working on and just thinking about how to ask better questions,
Mm-hmm.
even with my own family or my employees. Like sometimes we have like the level one questions, how was your day? But asking better questions, a little bit deeper questions, right? So talk about this. How important is this listening, and how, and if you're not a good listener, like some people like
Yeah,
me, you have to
yeah,
really work at it. Like, how do you practice this, I guess?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we try to lead this particular topic by example. So inside of all of our learning platform are reflection questions. And we're trying to equip the individuals taking the learning journeys to get better at asking reflection questions.
Mhm.
So asking questions that get people to think, that get people to reflect, that they may not have an immediate answer to, but it's something that next time we get together, I'd like for you to be thinking about this particular question so that we can unpack this, because I think it will really help navigate through the topic that you mentioned to me you're wrestling with, right?
Mhm.
So doing so in a way that is truly reflective. Sometimes it's even good to have the basic questions, right? Like, hey everyone, we're just going to talk. We thought it'd be funny to do an icebreaker about what's your favorite movie and why, right?
Mhm.
All of a sudden, what I have found, Brett, in these icebreak type questions that we can do in our teams, all of a sudden people start getting to know each other more,
Mhm.
right? Oh, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that you da 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 da. All because we asked the silly question about what's your favorite movie and why. Um, but those questions do have a place in the workplace, because the more my team knows each other, the more I know them, the more I help them reflect on things that are important to them. Um, and people may, the more this team feels like they know one another. And when you know one another, you want to work hard for one another, right? So, um, start creating conversation, creating dialogue, and sitting back and reflecting. I think, again, the art of a great teacher is to listen and observe the classroom. Figure out pretty quickly who the other students turn to, whether it's a question or whether it's something that's even going on in the school or going on in a sport or in a life that people are like, what would that person do about it? Like, leaders show up in unique ways, right?
Mhm.
Um, and teachers do a great job learning their classroom. Who are the kids that create the energy, positive or negative? And this is one reason why we as leaders should do more active listening, because it gives us the opportunity to actually watch and explore what's happening, which then can inform other questions we ask, decisions we make, responsibilities we give or retract at times. Um, so yes, I provide in Leadership Fusion specific leadership actions,
Mhm.
right? Specific questions. It's not rocket science. These are
Mhm.
not overly complicated, over engineered questions. But I reflected back on what were some of the things that Miss Gregory taught me. What are some of the things that I've experienced? And in some cases, what do I need to do more of as well?
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah.
basic questions, like my takeaway from that particular chapter in Leadership Fusion is all about somebody picking it up and going, you know what, I'm going to go make a copy because these questions are really good and I want to use them in my next discussion. To me, that's we have succeeded. We have helped people unlock human potential. And I will tell you, there's just so many bosses and managers who just don't do that, right? They think it's like telling. We're just going to tell people what to do. We're going to watch how internal marketing or HR communicates to the organization, which mostly is all about telling. Here's our internal newsletter. Here's what we want to tell people versus creating conversation, ending with a question, opening up with a question, encouraging reflection, encouraging people to ask the question. And we hear about it often because people say like, well, that's the untouchable in organizations, right? The fact that even that topic exists, nothing should be untouchable. What should be the mission is untouchable. Like, this is what we're focused on. But if there's things happening inside the organization that aren't enabling us and helping us get there, why do some of those things that lock up a team in a negative way become the untouchable? Well, because we don't ask enough questions and we don't encourage our people to challenge, to explore, to reflect what they're experiencing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love the icebreaker. It was funny. I was meeting on a Zoom call with some leaders a couple weeks ago, and ours was, what was your favorite TV show as a kid? And it was so funny because actually it was like I was giving or asking them their age, because whatever they said, their favorite TV show, I knew how old they were.
But
Anyways.
what I'm curious is what did their eyes and energy and posture look like when you asked that question, right? Because it all brings us back.
Yeah, it brings you back. I mean, you kind of get that innocence of your childhood back
Yeah.
in, and you take your back to the living room, watching it with your family, whatever. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was really, really cool. We're running about out of time. I got a couple questions I really want to dive into with you though, Mike. So number one, I just want to touch on this real quick. I don't think we have time to talk about it, but number one, when you start having these conversations, you said in your book with your employees or with your team, a couple of questions that you can ask yourself is, does their individual role align with the mission of your organization? And another question I think is really good, asking all the leaders out there, is, do you know the personal and professional goals of your employees? I think that's a great question, because if you don't, then that's a good starting point, good conversation.
Right.
Let's dive into, where's the boundary? Something I want to dive into. So you're the manager, you're the boss of this employee. You're talking about their professional, personal types of goals, but you also want them to work for your organization hard. You want to have a good work ethic. You want to bring in, have them, trained well and to work and be a good employee for your organization. So what does that look like? This boundary, you want to talk about personal and professional goals, but then they're accountable to you. Can you talk about that a little bit, of what's the dynamic of that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. One, I think getting to know your people is important, and your people feeling as though you know them is important. I would argue that there's a huge percentage of the workforce that does not feel like their employers care about them, and unfortunately, that number is so much larger than we should ever accept in the workplace. And it's because of this that people don't even get to know me. I'm just a number. I'm just an employee number. I'm just an ID, et cetera. The boundary is, I always tell people, like, it's okay to let people know you care about them. I've even verified with attorneys, it's okay to tell people, hey, I love my team. Like, if you're on my team, I'm here to support you. And, they don't have to share things. So you're not trying to pry out things. And if you touch on something that like, ooh, that seems like something that may take us down a negative path, I don't have to keep harping on it. But what I also will share is that if people are dealing with stuff, and if I were in an audience, I would say, in a show of hands, who's dealing with stuff? And 99% of the audience would raise their hand, whether it's first or whether it's once they see that 67% raised their hand, the rest may go, raise my hand. That stuff is not left at the door. Some people have the ability to manage and compartmentalize, but most don't. And that stuff is going to creep in whether you like it or not. I'd rather know what that stuff is so I can help and look at my resources as a company and as a person and say, how can I help employees and team members with said stuff, right? Um, and the more I can do that, the more I can help, the more I can individualize their experience, and our company can support people in a way that's not prescriptive, that's identifying what are you dealing with? How can I help you manage that so you can be most effective here? And if at some point that stuff becomes so big, maybe it is time for people to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But you may also be the first person in person's career that's ever asked about what's going on and how can we help manage that so you can show up here, right? Versus just, I'm going to kick you out the door and go on to the next employee. Recruiting is easier than retaining people.
For
But if we
sure.
can get you focusing on the things you need to do to retain, invest in your people, it will become easier, which will help the recruiting process,
Yeah.
right? And so, the boundary is don't push. You can ask about things in ways that get people thinking of what they want to share. You can create icebreakers. You can ask people to, hey, over the next 4 months, we're going to be spending some time on personal and professional goals. You don't have to share if there's certain personal goals that you don't want to share. But the more you share, we all know that accountability matters.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you share, the more people can encourage you, the more you may find out like Brett's goal is the same as Mike's goal, right? Whoever you are listening to this, one of us may have the same goal you have. And us knowing that goal and objective and vision for what we want will help us all be
Mm-hmm.
more effective. So I know I've seen the examples of when this works. I've seen CEOs lead this way. I've seen managers buried layers into an organization. They're creating more output than any of the experienced groups and teams because they have a manager that really cares about them, and they ride or die together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what they do. And I always say the one way to identify an organization that's doing this well is to identify where the innovations and creative ideas are coming from. Because if they're all coming from the top, they're not doing this topic well.
Mm-hmm.
If all of a sudden you start seeing, I use the example of manufacturing environments, when you see the plant floor creating the innovations and ideas that help elevate their customer experiences and their organization, you've identified somewhere in there's a leader who has built enough trust and care in his people or her people that they're sharing openly ideas of how we should be doing things different and not worrying about the ramifications of getting their hand slapped for questioning authority, right? These are the kinds of environments we want to create. And all of a sudden you do that, and a second shift or third shift supervisor feels so invested in because he or she came up with an idea that made things better. That's how we all, listening to this, someone did that in our lives. Someone helped us see that potential and opened up an environment for us to communicate and share. It may have happened in your upbringing. It may have happened in the classroom. It may have happened in one of your employers. If you feel like it hasn't, that's the problem, because there's
Yeah.
not enough people willing to lead intentionally and personalize the experience.
Wow. So good. Before we wrap up the show, this last question, I want to just talk about this. We talk about gratitude a lot as leaders. What are we grateful for? We journal about what we're grateful for. I loved what you put in your book about just going deeper into gratitude, because again, I was reading the book and this inspired me to do something, because I've been just trying to celebrate people, right? I think we don't celebrate, especially as leaders. We set our goal, we reach our goal, and then we just set another one. We forget to celebrate, and celebrating other people's wins too is something I've been really working on. You talk about this deeper gratitude. Can you dig into that? Like, how do you, when you think of thanking or showing gratitude, how do you do that?
Yeah, yeah. So the topic I cover in the book is really about just personalizing, right? So I started earlier. I shared if there's someone who has done something that you have noticed that you may even think, oh, well, somebody else probably covered that. Be intentional. Keep a log of things you see that are positive, and be intentional to check off that log. And checking off would be, I told the person that I saw or shared with the team and publicized what I've noticed. You'll learn it if people want to hear that individually or in public. Um, it's important for us to remember the things that we should all be grateful for. And we all have, so even if you're in one of the darkest times in your life or your career, there are things that you can be grateful for. There are things that are going on in your life positively that are keeping you going, right? And you're not alone in the journey. Sometimes it takes a really hard work to figure that out, but there are things that you can be grateful for. When you see things that make you feel grateful, there's sometimes direct human attachment to that. And being intentional, writing a quick note, circling a couple keywords that you want to just pass on, that this is what I'm seeing you do. And I want to just keep encouraging you to do it. It may not be work related. It may be things outside of work as well. That, hey, the way that you structure your day to show up at your kids' activities, people see that, and it's not the norm. And I just want to encourage that behavior, right?
Yeah.
The way that you put, I always talk about, us leaders, we put a lot of time into our own professional development. How much time do we put into our personal relationships with our spouse, with our children, with our what I call our 3 a.m. friends? We all can do better there. Every single one of us can raise our hand and say, I can do better there. Just be intentional. And when you see other people doing it, tell them that you see it and that it's made an impact on you. So I encourage write 1 to 3 names down, jot a note. Here are the 3 people that, even if I didn't see them do something recently, they've had this kind of impact on my life, and I want them to know that. I want them to hear that. And that's that extra layer of gratitude, is being intentional, taking an extra 3 minutes to do something and factoring it into your day, making it every week I'm going to try to, and start with 1. Every week I'm going to try to make sure I'm going to, not just try to, I'm going to tell someone something that's had a positive impact. So, just recently I had a friend call me at a time where I was getting ready to speak, and the friend asked how I was doing. And I was like, you know what? I'm really not feeling it, and I'm concerned my audience is going to feel it. Well, that person prayed with me. And that experience went really well. It's one of those, for those who public speak, we know sometimes if we really get into it, it becomes almost an out of body experience that, like, whoo, that was energizing.
Yeah.
But I need to call that person who called me at the right moment and asked how I was doing, right? To let them know that when you do that to people, because my guess is I'm not the only one, it makes a profound impact on the lives of those that you surround yourself with.
For
So
sure.
just that extra layer of intentionality. Be intentional in everything you do.
No, I love that. And I love that you just talk about kind of doing that daily discipline of kind of having a little bit of a process or a system. That always helps me. When I wake up, I think about who am I going to encourage today? Who am I going to celebrate today? And I just think about that. And I think I forget who it was, but he talked about putting pennies in his right pocket. Once he said some encouraging word to someone, he took one and to put it to his left pocket.
Yeah.
And just to kind of having that little process or system, I think
Yeah.
is really important. Mike, we're out of time on this podcast, but I want to give you just an opportunity, because I know TMI, Talent Magnet Institute, you help people dig really deep into leadership. You have a lot of great resources. Can you just tell our audience a little bit about that? Like, if they want to dig deeper, they want to be a better leader. Obviously they've heard the podcast. This is surface level, but if they want to go, just continually train and work on this,
Yeah.
what can you offer them?
So for anyone who acquires the book or inquires about Leadership Fusion, like we've talked a little bit about on this podcast, you can go to talentmagnet.com/fusion and sign up for our Leadership Basics course. We've got about 3,000 people who engage, plus that engage with our brand. And at any given time, 700-800 people going through the leadership basics journey. It goes a little bit deeper than basics, but it's our basics, right? What we believe creates talent magnet leaders. So you can get certified, you can go through 7-8 different journeys, you can get a certification in each pathway that you go down. And it's just a way to reframe the way you're thinking about leadership. Just reframe the way you're thinking about leadership. So again, if you go to talentmagnet.com, you can see a lot of the resources that we offer. Follow me on LinkedIn or any social media platform. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, creating content and conversation. And it would be a pleasure. Please let me know that you learned about me and the work we're doing through Brett and this body of work that he's doing, because that way we can just draw the connection and how the communities and the world continues to get so much smaller.
I love that. We're going to put that in our show notes on our YouTube channel, guys. It's the Iron Deep YouTube channel. And yeah, and I think it's a great place to start. No matter where you're at in your journey, we can all learn. I mean, just from this podcast alone, I've learned, I think I got 5 things written down that I could have an opportunity to do better. So thanks, Mike. It's been awesome being on the Snodgrass podcast. God bless you, brother.
All right. Thank you so much. Look forward to the next conversation, Brett.